So thank you very much for inviting me today. And it's good to see new faces and previous faces from the previous workshop. So yes, I've been in the industry for 40 years, and I've seen many changes regarding technologies, regarding the way we work, regarding energy management and all the processes around that. But specifically what I have seen changes is in legislation. And unfortunately, that legislation for me, though it's great that we've got legislation, because that has been drivers, what I've seen to escalate what I'm doing within the organisations, within the industry, because organisations then are coming to people like myself to drive their energy down. And though we're seeing this legislational changes, what we're not seeing is and I call it legislation with teeth, where not all organisations are really complying to legislation. So there's a lot of legislation out there that asks us to report on energy consumptions, gas, electricity, and transport, but it doesn't always make us drive that energy down. There's no penalties or no benefits for us to do that. And I always find that though the legislation's good, as I say, there's no teeth to it. We need to really have more stringent legislation processes. For me as well, legislation hasn't been communicated particularly well. There's many organisations that still aren't complying and following up with that. So, I'm an ESOS lead assessor, and the ESOS process is a European directive, but the ESOS labelling is around the UK. But when I look across Europe, I can sense and seen that many organisations haven't complied to that process and that legislation. So they're the biggest changes. And from an organisation's point of view, I don't think they should be in any way impacted by that, because it would benefit them if they follow the legislation and driving energy down, because energy is your third largest expense. So why not really focus on your energy and look at making an impact on your energy costs, because your benefit is going to be cost, and then our benefits is going to be the environment. So we should really focus on that. And my advice to organisations are my principles, which is the 4 principles of energy management, and that is review, realign, reduce, and report on your energy. And just by following those 4 principles, simple principles, then you'll be able to achieve everything you need to do regarding your cost, and I'm sure you'll be able to deliver your compliance around legislation.
Okay, so you are of the opinion that these targets are good for the companies and they should definitely try to reduce it, given that it's also cost reduction for the companies. So that makes a lot of sense. Rather than seeing these things as a challenge to the companies, they should be embracing what's happening through the regulations. So as you mentioned, there are a lot of regulations which have come, and which you're also expecting that there should be more regulations which should happen in this domain and should be enforced better. So in that case, among the plethora of programs and policies by UK government on energy reduction, what is working now and what is not working, and what needs more support in terms of implementation? And from your experience and from your foresight, what could be coming in the horizon?
So if I look at the legislations that I'm working on at the moment, which is ESOS, I think ESOS does work really well, because it's actually bringing energy management into the boardroom, and I think that's key, and that's what makes things really happen when we're raising that. As I said before, what I don't think then happens, the weaknesses there is that, so where I'm going with the compliance there, so what we have to do as ESOS lead assessors, we have to carry out assessments, and we have to put together recommendations. So those recommendations will go forward to the board, but this is where it fails. We don't have to comply. The compliance then stops. We only have to come up with recommendations. What should happen now is the organisation must deliver those recommendations, or a percentage of those recommendations. So that's where I feel it's failing regarding that. And then in addition to that, we've got ISO 50001, which isn't legislation. And I think that's an amazing process to bring in, again, bring in energy management and energy efficiency to the boardroom, but we're not seeing no take up on it. And I don't really understand that. And it's a really good process to be sort of embracing as an organization.
Okay, and from your experience, what more do you think could come in the future? What new regulations could come up?
I don't think there's any more legislation that should be applied. They've now introduced SECRA, which I quite like the idea of SECRA regarding the reporting. And what I like about that is that it's an annual thing, so it's on a regular basis. Again, possibly our weaknesses there are the fact that we only are addressing larger organizations, okay? People that have got more than 250 employees. We're missing a very big gap of the SME marketplace, the smaller organizations. And I always say, from a corner shop to an office block and everything in between, to the corner shops, those organizations, they're using energy. Again, they need support, and there needs to be some form of legislation around them as well. Because if you take all the SME marketplace, I'm sure that would take out a big chunk of energy consumption that we need to reduce.
Okay, so yes, so now we understand that one thing we should look out for is SCCR, which is currently applying for all the large companies, and ideally it should also come for the smaller players within UK. And one more thing you mentioned, which is very useful, is that if the companies wants to start in this journey, they should go with ISO 50001. So
Yes.
yeah, so I guess thank you so much for this, and thank you so much for all the insights. And now we'll be moving on to other speakers, and I'm pretty sure there'll be many of the audiences who might have something to ask to you, which we will give you some time at the end of the discussion. So thank you once again, Paul. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. So hi, and so now we'll move on to Hiran Prashanth. So Hiran Prashant is one of the stalwarts in the field. So he has been in India for some time with 13 years of experience within the energy field. He was a certified sustainability assessor from Confederation of Indian Industry, or CII, and he has conducted more than 200 detailed energy and green audits, which is a lot, and greenhouse gas inventorization, life cycle analysis, among other things. And also he has received the best sustainability assessor award from ministry from Mr. Prakash Javadekar. So we'll be hoping to learn a lot from you. He's also a guest faculty at PGPSM, so I think that giving knowledge would be far easier for him than others. And secondly, he was also behind formulation of Green Pro, which is probably the only eco label or the most sought after eco label in India. So for the same reason, we would be asking our questions around the same, around the eco labels. Okay, so if I may begin, so one thing is that how are governments and industry associations incentivizing energy reduction and carbon reduction, and what are the roles of eco labels in this?
Thanks, Sriram. Thanks for having me here. I've shared a presentation. Should I run it from my system, or will it be run from there? Oh, Anshul is sharing. All right. Thanks. No, actually, I thought I'll put my points in a presentation. This is more of trying to capture things. Probably what Paul was telling about the scenario in UK, how the legislation and the work which is presently happening on field, how there might be a mismatch between both these legislation and the activities that is happening on the field. On the contrary, what is happening in India, I would like to put a few points on that. particularly the first part of your question, which asks about how is government incentivizing the whole energy efficiency activities, or I would rather start with energy efficiency first, then probably move on to other resource efficiency activities, because right now the government is also looking at resource efficiency as a bigger bigger umbrella than only focusing only on energy efficiency. To start with, 2008 was a brilliant year, especially for consultants like me. It was a brilliant year because there were a lot of legislations which came in both on the national level and also in terms of the state level. When I say state level, it was more of a pollution control board, norms that had come in, the new norms that had come in. So in 2008, we had this National Action Plan on Climate Change, and under this National Action Plan on Climate Change, there were 8 missions which were taken up, and that under that 8 mission, probably the most important mission that the government had pursued was the National Mission on Enhanced Energy Efficiency. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So here under enhanced national mission on national mission for enhanced energy efficiency, there were different there were different verticals that were set up by the government. A lot of task force were set up, and each of the task force had a very focused approach towards improving energy efficiency, both at the municipality level and also at the national level. Say, when I say national level, is what I mean is more of the industry level energy efficiency improvement. Next slide, please. You'll have to go one slide forward. Yeah, all right. So when we talk about the National Mission for Enhanced Energy Efficiency, probably the most important of all the missions, of course, all the 4 missions are very important under this, but the most talked about and most, emphasis which was given was under PACT mechanism, which is Perform, Achieve, and Trade Act. It was one of the, it was a very unique system. Of course, it had it was mirroring what CDM was taking forward, and it was mirroring other carbon credit schemes, but it was very unique for an energy efficiency system. So Perform, Achieve, and Trade Act, which was for improving the energy efficiency of the industries. Then there are other missions also. Say for example, the market transformation scheme. So here the market transformation was more for energy efficient products. We have heard about the Ujala scheme, where the LED bulbs, where the market transformation for LED lamps were propagated. The government did not stop only with LED lamps, but now they are pursuing with energy efficient air conditioners, energy efficient chillers. So this would be a tipping point in terms of consumer and energy efficiency system. So as a consumer, I would be able to look at the product in terms of energy efficiency, not only in the cost point of view, but also in the energy efficiency point of view. And then this would be an increased, increased market share for some of the companies or some of the brands who are very well into energy efficiency. So this is one way of incentivizing certain companies who are very good in terms of energy efficiency. The third aspect was on energy efficiency financing. This is again a very important scheme, Energy Efficiency Partial Risk Guarantee Fund. The Partial Risk Guarantee Fund here is for companies who would like to get finance for implementing energy efficiency. Right now, none of the commercial banks, I wouldn't say none, but most of the commercial banks do not give finance for energy efficiency products, because they do not have a product for financing. Say, in case the whole energy efficiency fails. Say, I'm just giving an example. If you are implementing VFD, if the project does not give you energy efficiency savings, what would the bank have as a assurance? They cannot take back the VFD and keep it in their locker, saying that it is very important. So there has to be a partial risk guarantee fund, which has been developed by the World Bank, and it was given to India. Some of the finance was given to India, and through SIDBI and through other banks, this partial risk guarantee fund is also it is one way of giving an incentive to industry to move towards energy efficiency. Next slide, please, Anshul. I'll talk about PAT quickly. Yeah, PAT is Perform, Achieve, and Trade Act. Where some of you might be already aware of PAT mechanism. It's a brilliant mechanism which India had proposed. It was proposed, I think, somewhere in the 2011 COP as a part of India's strategies towards reducing their carbon footprint. Basically, PAT is perform in terms of energy efficiency, achieve your energy efficiency target, and trade the certificate that you get in terms of energy efficiency improvement. So this has in fact propelled the energy efficiency market. When I say market, I'm not only talking about the cost that companies are saving, the operating cost that companies are saving, but I'm also talking about the supply chain here. So there's been a new technology suppliers who have come in from Europe and other parts of the world to India. The R&D has developed extremely well in India also to cater to the energy efficiency market, so that the whole ecosystem has developed around the PAT mechanism. Next slide, please. In this, the PAT mechanism, presently there are about 12 sectors who are under who are classified under PAT mechanism. They'll have to they'll have to reduce their energy efficiency. They'll be given a target, and they'll have to reduce reduce their energy consumption. The latest that has been taken up is the commercial buildings. So commercial buildings as low as 500 metric ton of oil equivalent. Someone who consumes 500 metric ton of oil equivalent, a very small 3-star hotel would also come under PAT mechanism here. Just to explain the next slide, just to explain about how PAT mechanism actually gives an incentive for the companies. The next slide, please. So here, this is what happens in PAT mechanism. So company is given a target in terms of specific energy consumption. Let's say, for example, I'm just giving an example. If a motorcycle is being produced in a company, for producing one motorcycle, you are consuming 120 units of energy. The government will say, right now you are consuming 120 units of energy. You cannot consume 120 units in the next 3 years. You'll have to bring down the average to about 100 units of electricity. This 100 units of electricity, if the company is able to achieve this 100 units of electricity for producing one motorcycle, they will not be penalized for it. They will not be incentivized, but at the same time, they'll not be penalized. Let's say the company is over achieving, and they have achieved to 80 units per motorcycle. This 20 units, the 20 units which they have overachieved in the first quadrant, if you see, the 20 units which they have overachieved, they will be given, they'll be given an equivalent energy saving certificate. This energy saving certificate can be traded in market for a financial benefit. So this is a market-based mechanism which the government has taken up. Similarly, for other units, let's say a cement for producing 1 ton of clinker, they'll have to consume maybe 65 units of electricity. If they have not complying to it, they'll have to pay a penalty in terms of buying certificate from the market. So this is how the whole PAT mechanism, which is Perform, Achieve, and Trade Act, was taken up, and a lot of companies have made a lot of money out of this PAT mechanism, at least in the first cycle. The next two slides which you see, I'll quickly go through the next 2 slides here. The next slide here. Next slide, please. So there's a lot of savings that the company had got. I've taken it exactly from Bureau of Energy Efficiency here. Companies have saved a lot of money in terms of the operating cost. There are a lot of investments also have come in. This is for patch cycle 1. The patch cycle 2 is on the in the next slide. Patch cycle 2. Patch cycle 2, the patch cycle, we are presently in the patch cycle number 3, and there are talks that the patch cycle 3 can be much more, the benefits might be much more compared to the patch cycle 1 and patch cycle 2, with the with a lot of financing coming in and with a lot of new projects coming in. Next slide, please. I'll finally end this with 2 minutes right now. Just a difference between labels and eco-labels, because the second part of the question here talks about how is eco-label helping this, or how would eco-label push a company towards energy efficiency. A difference between a label and an eco-label is, of course, eco-label, it talks about the environmental performance of a product or of a service that which has been put on. The first eco-label here is the most prominent one is, of course, the star labeling system. The next slide, please. The star labeling system that we see on the appliances. There's been a huge savings in terms of star labeling system, because as a consumer, I would prefer to have a 5-star label system rather than a 1-star or a 2-star label system. There are other private eco-labels also, industry-led private eco-labels. Next slide, on Green Pro, IGBC, and Green Co. So these are some of the eco-labels which are presently quite famous in India, and of course in other parts of the world also. Say IGBC, Green Pro, they have been accepted in other countries, Southeast Asian countries, as an eco-label. Some of the incentives that the government is giving, especially for IGBC, is the next slide. We would be talking about what are the additional benefits in case a building goes with the IGBC rating system. There are additional 5% FAR, floor space index, would be given. 5% is a big, is a good incentives for companies. The next slide would talk about how Green Co and the Rajasthan Pollution Control Board have come together. In case a company in Rajasthan is certified under Green Co, they will have an additional benefit incentive for in terms of the consent fee that they'll have to pay. There'll be a drastic reduction in the consent fee to be paid to Pollution Control Board, and they'll have other opportunities also in terms of if they're under say a particular industry zone, their pointing system might be much better, and the investment that they'll have for that particular company from outside India, that will also be higher. So these are some of the major incentives for moving towards energy efficiency. Why I stopped with energy efficiency is, of course, there's a bigger plan which is coming in for resource efficiency. Just like Bureau of Energy Efficiency, Bureau of Resource Efficiency is also going to come up in India in probably in this year or in a couple of years. That would be a major change in the whole landscape of sustainability in India. So these are, I know I've taken a lot of time, but I thought I'll put this across finishing it. I'm sorry if I've taken a lot of time.
No.
I'm a consultant, I cannot stop talking the moment I start.
Yeah, so thank you, Hiran, and people who said that we went too fast on the topics. I would request you to register in the link given on the chat so that we can send you the video once we are finished the recording, so that you can hear things maybe more slowly and observe the videos carefully. Also, one more thing, Hiran, given that you really work with eco-labels, which, as you mentioned, are playing a large role in changing the environment or energy for whole of the country, and potential to change the other places as well. So one thing I want to talk from your personal experience is that when you went to product manufacturers, how did you convince them to embrace eco-labels? I mean, how did you do it?
No, it was actually very simple. Green makes business sense. Whatever you propose as green, it definitely makes a business sense in terms of operating cost. Product manufacturers were very receptive on this. unless, when you talk about the European industries, the abatement cost. So abatement cost comes here as a very important aspect. In terms of the Indian manufacturing, we are still looking at the low-hanging fruits, and we are yet to climb up the ladder. In some cases, I'll not say most sectors, but in some sectors, paper, cement, they're absolutely brilliant. They're almost in the top of the pyramid right now. But for other sectors, we are still on the low-hanging fruits. So the abatement cost is very low in terms of manufacturing in India. Whereas when you move to US or to European countries, the abatement cost is very high. Abatement cost is cost per ton of carbon dioxide. How much you'll have to invest for reducing 1 ton of carbon dioxide. So here it is much, much lesser compared to the European countries. So that is why people are pumping in funds to India, China, and also to other African countries, so that the abatement cost is much lesser. Much lesser. So here, like I said, the green makes business sense. That the product manufacturers do understand a lot, and for them it is all about reducing the operating cost. We've had a very simple, job of convincing them. It's not a very difficult job, in fact.
Okay, that's good to know. It's good to know that it's easy to convince companies to go hand in hand with green and energy savings. So thank you once again, Hiran. And people who felt that maybe we went a little bit too fast, please do register in the link given on the chat. Even otherwise, please do register on the link given on the chat. And we would definitely share the video once it is done, and other related contents to you once we get the details. So once again, thank you to Hiran. And now we move on to Ishaa Gakkhar. So Ishaa has a wonderful experience of more than 13 years of experience in working with the government, private sectors, multilateral companies, multilateral entities, and her experience is specifically in energy and infrastructure industries, including power, steel, cement, etc. And those are all, as we know, are hard to abate sectors. So those are the kind of companies which takes most of the heat, whether it is Europe or India or elsewhere. Those are the companies which takes most heat. And she was also part of key assignments such as project management unit for monitoring nuclear operations and a study of regulations governing exploration practices in the energy sector. So she has an overall idea also on how the sector works, rather than in addition to the view of how energy works within these sectors. So as we mentioned, most of the questions would be around how to abate sector, especially given that you have experience working with different countries, some countries such as Australia and even Bangladesh, Zambia, Brazil, Sri Lanka, among other countries. We expect you to give us a more global outlook on the topic. So if I may begin, the first question is, for the companies that are in the hard to abate sector, what action can they take to reduce their energy footprint?
Yeah, first of all, I would like to thank Pozhat and Shriram and his team for inviting me for this webinar and giving me an opportunity to share my views on the same. So to start with, we believe that any company who is seeking to unlock the energy footprint solution, they should have to explore some key questions, like why should a sector will be changing to the energy footprint? So the reason for that will be the two main factors which actually can, which could be a demand driver for this is, one is the customer demand and other is regulatory incentive. Otherwise, any industry which is going on will not be moving for energy footprints and not be looking forward for that. As the hard to abate terminology itself says, hard to abate. The energy, the hard to abate means the sectors which are highly energy intensive sectors, which are actually using energy at large scale, and there is a good cost element attached to it. For example, take the example of the steel. While the BOF process remains the main workhorse of the industry, it has a limited technical potential to substitute coal with any another energy source like hydrogen. Further, the investment made in BOF today will be recovered by using the other sources like hydrogen, will be recovered in next 30 to 40 years. So with these things, it becomes very challenging for them to actually shift to the other sources. But considering the climate change and greenhouse emissions, there is a lot of push from the government itself. And keeping in the view, the National Hydrogen Mission was announced by Prime Minister of India on 15th of August 2021. It comes at a time when India is well on its way to meet its Paris commitments for a greater cause of climate change and global warming. The government plans to implement green hydrogen consumption obligation, which is similar to the one which is for the renewable purchase obligation. RPO requires actually electricity distribution company to buy a fixed amount of renewable energy to cut the reliance on the fossil fuels. On the similar way, they for the hard to abate sectors, they have to actually procure, there will be obligation for green hydrogen consumption. So the green hydrogen process has 90 to 96% lower carbon emission footprint than any conventional natural gas based DRI. So that is why it needs to be promoted. But it cannot happen overnight. This kind of transition can never happen overnight. It can be steel making, it can be cement making, it can be fertilizers, it can be in the transportation sector as well, because there is a huge cost attached to it. The lowest consumption of the producing green steel is still 20%, 22%, 20 to 22% higher than the blast furnace process. Renewable intermittency contribute to a significant share of the cost of the fossil-free steel or the cement manufacturing. Hence, overall cost of production can be reduced by blending green hydrogen with the natural gas during the period of low renewable generation. With green hydrogen and grid electricity with the renewable power is the only way the companies can strategize. They cannot work in silos. They need to come together. They need to actually get the scales to deliver the economics of scale. More the demand, more it will lead to the better supply, and better supply will lead to better infrastructure. And this heighten the demand across the multiple sector will help derive the innovation, and all vital to de-risk investments. So all in all, the way the companies can look at, they need to come together and they need to come up with a good demand number, which will help them, because when there is a demand, then there will be a supply. And when the supply is there, then the infrastructure needs to be created for that. So all in all, this they need to come together. They cannot work in silos. And green steel plant located near the favorable RE location will have the lowest logistic cost. All the plants, steel plants, cement plants, they are actually near to the raw material like iron, limestone mines. So for them, access to favorable renewable energy is critical toward achieving a break-even. So one way of doing that is they need to actually combine, the way I have told, they need to actually blend green with the green energy and renewable power with the grid electricity, will accelerate the transition to the green hydrogen based manufacturing by the companies. The other way of looking at is financing. This particular financing is another important aspect to it. So they need to come up with the green technology, as the green technology requires the lot of upfront capital costs. They need to come up with the innovative financing mechanisms, and without government support to actually financing them, it is not possible. So they need to, the companies need to go and need to give the solution which they feel that is feasible for them, and come up with a financing mechanism for the same. Last but not the least, investing in R&D so that an aggressive price reduction can happen for the electrolyzer and storage technologies. That is the way they can pull down the hydrogen production cost. So these are certain strategies the companies can follow to go ahead with this.
Okay. So Isha, one more thing, given that we have seen different projects around the globe, you might see that there will be different ways to tackle hard to abate sector energy problem. So what are some of the technologies which we should look out for, especially in sectors such as cement, steel, power, such hard to abate sectors, particularly for energy reduction? What are some of the technologies we should look out for?
So the three aspects of it, there are the three aspects which I would like to highlight. One of which will be they need to use the energy efficient like innovation technologies like automatic power factor controller. In general, it is the most of the industry power factor can be controlled with installation of capacitor banks, installation of various type of method of installation in order to improve power factor, such as individual capacitors, fixed capacitor, automatic capacitor, combination of these capacitors. The other could be the fuel efficient engines. So these are the certain hardware which I'm talking. That is one of the way the technology can be looked at. These the fuel efficient engines deliver more power and higher torque at lesser RPM, and this will reduce fuel consumption of the dampers. Energy efficient motors are another way to reduce energy losses through improved design, better material, and improved manufacturing techniques. Soft starter provide a reliable and economical solution to the problems like excessive wear and premature failure of chains, belts, gears, mechanical seals by delivering a controlled release of the power to the motor. The other could be the slip power recovery system, which is more efficient alternative speed control mechanism of use with the slip ring motors. So these are certain hardwares, and energy efficient transformer could be another one. These are the one which could be the one which would be the technology wise which can be used. On another alternate to be the alternate energy consumption. So reaching net zero at a global scale will take a variant of renewable energy sources more than just like wind or solar. New energy sources like green hydrogen to synthetic fuels will enable the broader decarbonization, including in industrial typical reliant on the fossil fuels, which is mainly by the hard abate sectors. So hydrogen storability makes it a obvious choice for the clean power, both of its own and as a potential sustainable for the batteries when combined with the renewables. The short-term and long-term renewable energy storage could be another mechanism for actually using it. The other way is the carbon value chain. Carbon capture is not a new concept at all. The technology has been around since 1917 when oil and gas companies wanted to capture the carbon dioxide from the natural gas production process so that they could inject into the oil wells to improve the recovery. All this technology continue to become more robust and sophisticated, and investors have begun focusing on the method to use that stored carbon productivity and profitability. So these are the certain mechanisms which can be used.
Thank you, Isha. Thank you for letting us what's happening around the globe, especially in hard to abate sector, and what are some of the technologies that we should be looking out for the companies who are looking to do some major changes and planning for the next 10 years or so. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all your insights. Now, yes, thank you. So now we will move on to Priya ma'am. So Priya ma'am, she is a sustainability celebrity among us. So even when we called Hiran, he also seems to know her. So I cannot find any single person who does not know her. And it makes sense because she has more than 20 years of experience in the field, and she was also behind India's first integrated report. And her one of the reports also won consecutively. She also won the award for Asia's best report in one of the years. She also has experience and knowledge on strategy and sustainability. She has a relevant degree on the same as well. She is a master of GRI standards, climate change, carbon footprinting, among other things such as ISO 31000, and she's also CIA certified Green Co facilitator. And just like Hiran, she is also a guest faculty. She is guest faculty at XLRI for sustainability. And she has been helping all these companies with highest ESG risk in formulating their strategy as well as in reporting what they have done and what they have achieved. And one more thing is that she is a pranic healer. And she is also a Arhatic yoga practitioner associated with World Pranic Healing Foundation India. So she has also been giving her time outside sustainability for, I would say, social sustainability. So overall, her life is very value adding to all of us. Thank you, ma'am. And now I will move on to the questions. So first one is that we saw an IPCC report that we need to do some urgent and immediate actions if we have to achieve 1.5 degrees or even 2 degrees Celsius. So to have that, companies has to go for net zero at least in the coming years or coming decade. So what are the major challenges for organizations to tackle net zero? And how are uncertainties such as COVID-19 and social distancing, which are happening right now, such things impact businesses to attain climate-related goals?
Yeah, thank you, Sriram, for the wonderful introduction and for this opportunity to be a part of this esteemed panel with all these esteemed speakers. Anshul, may I request you to put up the slides, the first slide for question number 1. So while he's putting up the slide, the question that Sriram asked me is about the challenges towards net zero. So, towards as we move towards 2030 and then to 2050, the population is poised to rise, and also the urbanization, and therefore the food and water demand is poised to rise. And as the food and water demand rises, obviously the energy demand will rise. And as per IEA, the demand for energy is expected to rise by 25% between now and 2050. And this demand is largely being met by hydrocarbons as of now. And furthermore, in emerging economies are still investing in carbon heavy projects. And we have recently read in the news that China has restarted its coal-based projects again, and China is the largest emitter in the world. And volume growth in emission-intensive industries that Ishaa mentioned in steel and cement is poised to grow. And demand for plastics, where there are limited alternatives, is likely to grow by 150% by mid-century. So the demand itself is a big challenge. And coming to transportation sector, it's going to grow, and it's the freight demand is likely to triple by 2050, and aviation will grow to more than double. So, this is where we have to live with a growing energy demand. And coming to some of the specific challenges, number one, the government commitments and policies are still insufficient. After COP25 last year, about 121 countries have committed to a net zero, but these commitments all put together still account for less than 25% of the global emissions, and they are way short of the amount of commitment that is required to meet the 1.5 degrees target. And furthermore, the countries who have also committed, they are yet to break down their commitments into specific policies, sectoral targets, and robust roadmaps. So those concrete actions are yet to be seen. Secondly, businesses. So there are businesses who are taking the lead. They are recognizing the business case, like Hiran mentioned, that it's very easy for businesses to recognize that green makes a lot of sense. But then, out of millions of corporations, there are just about 7,000 companies who are actually reporting their climate-related performance to disclosures like CDP. And there are about 300 companies who have committed to the science-based targets initiatives. The business ambitions for 1.5 degrees centigrade pledge has 177 members already. However, these still constitute a majority, and about 65% of all these commitments are very, very short term. And overall, they are just about half of what is needed to meet the 1.5 degrees mark. Coming to investor, there is a growing pressure by the investors on corporations to decarbonize their operations and supply chains. However, when you talk to CEOs one-to-one, you realize that the pressure for short-term financial returns is higher than the pressure which is there for long-term decarbonization, which is there. So while there are investor consortiums like Climate Action 100 Plus, Net Zero Asset Owner Alliance, who are committing to decarbonize their portfolios, but overall there is a lot more traction required between the investor and the corporations to work towards the so-called trade-off between the short-term financial returns and the decarbonization which is required. And coming to public opinion, there is a lot of pressure which is mounting. We hear of the Fridays for Future movement and Greta Thunberg and Extinction Rebellion, and there's a lot of headline grabbing incidents which are happening. But then these are very limited to some geographies like Europe. And globally, there's just some surveys say that there are only 16% of adults who consider climate change as one of the top 3 societal risks. And climate change comes well below unemployment, crime and corruption, etc. So this is another unfortunate reality. And cost of abatement, which Hiran mentioned and explained. So this is also a very big challenge for some sectors. So while power systems, already electrified sectors like buildings and appliances and surface transport will be very easy to not expensive to make to decarbonize. Sectors like long distance shipping and aviation. In shipping, it might cost around 100 to 180 US dollars for aviation and 200 to 300 US dollars for shipping for decarbonization. For heavy industries, the hard sectors which Ishaa was talking about, it will range from about 25 to 60 US dollars for steel and 120 to 160 dollars for cement industry, and more than 200 US dollars for plastic industry. And residential heating, while the abatement cost will be lesser for buildings which already have insulation, and it will also depend on geographical regions, but initial adoption and use of heat pumps and hydrogen, etc., would result in initial ranging between 85 to 120 US dollars. So this is also a very big challenge, the abatement cost, which would directly impact the bottom line of the business on a shorter term. Then the impact on the costs faced by consumers, this is not much in multiple sectors like healthcare, education, consumer electronics, mobile phones, hotels, restaurants. So it's negligible. However, there will be some impact on the poorer households when it comes to surface transport and residential coolings. And in terms of heavy industries, also only the intermediate products will be slightly more expensive, but overall the consumer cost is not going to be impacted so much. And the gross and net investment requirements, which is my last point. So if you look at the overall impact on GDP, the cost of decarbonization will impact the global GDP by less than 1% by 2050. But the overall, in absolute terms, the cost is high, and the largest investment is to build a global power system of about 100,000 terawatt hour per annum, including the transmission, distribution, and storage facilities, and the carbon capture and usage and storage facilities, which will cost about 130 billion US dollars per annum. This is, I'm talking up to 2050. And hydrogen production for 800 million tons per annum will cost 3.7 trillion US dollars over 30 years, or 130 billion US dollars per annum again. And industrial decarbonization will cost 5.5 billion US dollars per annum. So overall, the decarbonization cost to the economy, to the global economy, will be to the tune of $1.6 trillion per annum, which sounds like a big money. And that financing is one of the biggest challenges to to the climate achieving the net zero goals. And coming to COVID-19 and social distancing, I think personally it has been a big corrector in our business as well as personal behavior, because we have seen in the last 2 years, nearly 2 years, that a lot of travel, a lot of wasteful behaviors have been corrected. Like right now we are sitting here and talking to each other and doing a lot of productive work, and businesses are running at minimum travel, minimum office work. A lot of energy is getting saved, office infrastructure is usage is minimized. So the impact overall is positive, and if we are able to learn from this pandemic, I guess we'll be able to save a lot of energy in the long term. So that is my one line comment on COVID-19 and social distancing. As far as energy is concerned, of course, the bigger focus coming out of COVID-19 is to build better health and hygiene systems all across the world.
Okay. So thank you, ma'am. You mentioned about how finance would be one of the major challenges, and also how CEOs incentive on performing quarterly would be another challenge for the companies. So one other thing that we want to know is that since it is about improving energy efficiency or embracing renewable energy, so is there a certain limit to it? I mean, or the companies can keep on reaching net zero or being energy zero by just by improving energy efficiency or having renewable energy, or should they go looking for carbon offsetting or purchasing renewable energy maybe at a higher cost? Is that what companies must do?
Yes, yes, Sriram. So can we go to the next slide, please? So, there is no direct yes or no that I can give you. In fact, I'll request comments from my fellow panelists also. But what my reading tells me is that, it all depends upon the mix between these four, clean energy vectors, the clean electricity, hydrogen, biomass, and the fossil fuel plus CCS and U, which will vary across regions based on the local availability of resources, what is the infrastructure available, and most importantly, what is the political stance of the governments over there. So, there's no direct answer whether, what is the limit to energy efficiency or to adaptation of renewable energy. But it is a mix of all these four energy vectors that has to be examined by the companies and the governments together, and the best choice has to be worked out. And of course, lack of finance, because in terms of renewable energy, the net additional investment has to be to the tune of 1,830 billion US dollars per annum in the 2030s. And as far as biomass is concerned, for the chemical industry, it can serve as important fuel, but a sustainable supply is a constraint. So some of these considerations have to be taken, and the best choice has to be worked out.
Thank you so much for all your insights. So, ma'am, now I think we can move ahead with taking questions from all the participants. So there are already few questions given in the chat, and if there are any other questions, you can please raise your hand, and then you can you may raise your questions. So once again, I request everybody to please register in the link given. And for those who are not able to get their questions cleared in this session, because we are coming towards end, you can always mail us at sustainability@pozhat.com, which I will just message in the chat right now. So query is from I guess Shweta. Just 1 minute. It's Shweta Singh. I'm sorry. So on how the accountability of eco labels is established, I guess this is directed towards Hiran Prashanth, and about who checks it, if it is right on the side of manufacturers, and in case there are any consumer grievance, who addresses it.
Thanks. Normally, for an eco-label to work, there are different stakeholders who are involved in it. Of course, it can be government, but in case it's a voluntary eco-label, government might or may or may not be involved in it. But the highest onus is on the certifying agency and the accreditation agency. Say, for example, in case of Green Pro, CIA certifies the whole, creates the standards along with the product manufacturer. It sets the standards on how a product has to be certified, and there's a certification body. Say, for example, in this case, SGS or TUE or someone who has a laboratory who tests these performance. So the product manufacturer has to go and get these tests done. I'll give you an example of paint. So paint, there is something called as VOC, volatile organic compounds. So what is the volatile organic compounds per liter of paint or per kg of paint, whatever the quantity that you want to or the baseline that you want to set. So this has to be tested by the product manufacturer from a certified laboratory, say SGS or TUE. They'll have to get it certified, and then that certification will be used to get one of the parameters, complying to one of the parameters from the certifying body, which is CIA in this case. And not only this, the whole certification process will be vetted by a third party agency. In this case of Green Pro, which is an eco-label for green buildings in India, this has been vetted by an agency called as GEN, Global Eco-Labeling Network. So the Global Eco-Labeling Network vets the whole process. They'll see whether the standards are good. They don't want a lower standard to be set for certifying an eco-label. All these things will be done. So there are checks in place for all the voluntary eco-label. And of course, if it's a regulatory, say, star labeling system, the pressure is very, very high compared to the voluntary part. The regulatory part, the pressure and the standards are much, much stringent than the normal voluntary eco-label.
Thank you. So there is one more question that among all these technologies, I guess with respect to what Ishaa Gakkhar was speaking, that among all these technologies, what should be the priority order and where we can leverage more?
So there is no as such a priority order. They are certain things which go hand in hand, and it based on the suitability, because hard to abate sector is pretty large kind of one. It is about all the industries which are there. So however, the hydrogen one is the one which is upcoming one, and everyone is focusing on that, considering it is a most cleaner fuel. So and the ways the way it can be used is in the short term, you can start with actually intermixing it with the power grid, with the renewable and all, because you cannot be 100% beyond that. So it could be a phase-wise manner it can be used.
Sriram, I'll just add on to what Ishaa was telling. Ishaa has given a brilliant answer how to do it. But just to add on to what Ishaa is telling, apart from the technologies, one way of looking at it, like what Priya madam was also telling about, listing down the technologies in terms of the abatement cost. Ishaa has already told this in our earlier discussion. Just to re-emphasize on this, abatement cost can also be one factor for prioritizing the whole list of projects. Cost for abating 1 ton of carbon or 1 megawatt hour of electricity, that can be taken. So I thought,
very well said, Hiran. Thanks for adding.
Okay. Yes, Satyendra, please go ahead.
Hi, hello everyone, and thank you for such a wonderful session. Right now I'm taking care of EHS sustainability for my More Retail Private Limited. It used to be part of Aditya Birla Group, Aditya Birla Retail. As I'm taking, right now we are facing so many things. The pandemic is going on, and also there's a budgetary issues and all. But still, I want to ask. So I want to ask like some practical initiative I can take or in my organization to reduce our energy consumption and all in retail industry. So it's a retail industry. We have business in pan India from north to south, everywhere, Kolkata, Delhi, Bangalore, everywhere. So I want to ask what are the initiative, and I want to ask some practical initiative we can take to reduce our energy consumption. Anyway,
if it's okay, can I go ahead, Sriram?
Please go ahead.
Yeah. Normally, since especially during the pandemic, since the finance is hard and dry, what companies can look at especially in the retail segment is in terms of the ESCO market. Energy saving companies or energy service companies. These companies, they implement energy saving activities without any initial investment. Say, for example, in terms of retail, the major energy consumption would be in terms of your air conditioning load. So the air conditioning load, there are technologies which are available right now. I'll just give you a technology called as air conditioner energy savers. It saves energy based on the cutoff time of the compressor. So here, for 1 TR, I'm just giving an example here, for 1.5 TR, it might cost you somewhere around 15,000 rupees. But you don't have to invest it upfront. The ESCO company would invest it upfront. Based on the savings that you get, the savings will be shared between you and the company. So the payback period is like that. So that can be one way of looking at it. You have it for lamps, lights. You can change all your conventional fixtures to LED fixtures. You can change your air conditioning, or you can change. Say if you have a centralized chiller, and if you have want a heat pump, that can also be taken up. That heat pump can be used for refrigerating some of your daily consumables. So all these things can be taken up through ESCO model. So my input here is you can search for ESCO companies. Some of the ESCO companies who are there operating in India, that they can definitely help you in this activities. So the initial cost is taken up, and you just have to work with your the savings that you get.
Thank you so much, Hiran. Actually, we have replaced all our lights to LED lighting, and we are using installing also solar panel installing, but this one is new. Thank you so much for this ESCO company. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hiran. So there's one more query from Herman J. Harping. Yes, Herman, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. What I want to contribute is that when you buy a new LED or a new heat pump, you must also look at the performance, because you can buy a cheap air pump, but then you have most of the times a low COP, coefficient of performance. So you must look then to the right conversation with the machines. Also, when you look to ventilators on the rooftops, is it handy to have the right inverter for your solar panel? Because a solar panel with a microinverter has 10 to 50% more harvest, and it's more safety because you have a lower voltage on your roof, so less or no chance to have fire. So sometimes you must not buy the cheapest one, but you must buy maybe the middle one or the expensive one, because then you have more on the long term. So that's the reason why I want to say something about that.
Yes, Herman, and in fact, so Hiran had talked about the same. In that, so in India there is a there is something called uh, energy energy rating. So for all the appliances, the company also has to prominently display what kind of savings it would make, and 5-star being that it is one of the best, and 1-star being that it is performing very poor. And people do, I mean, even when I bought AC, I did look at the energy rating and then only bought. So this thing is happening.
Yeah,
And yes, and I guess in your place also there might be something equivalent to that.
yeah, yeah. Because when you buy the expensive refrigerator, you get it back in 2-3 years because you use less electricity.
Yes,
So
yes,
that's the
exactly.
reason why it's the way of thinking. And when you have a label on it, you have a trust that you can earn it back. The more rupees you pay for the refrigerator, for example.
Yes, yes. Thank you for
Thank
your perspective. And I guess we'll take one more final question because we don't want to delay this beyond the time that we committed. So Puneet, I guess you can have the final question.
Right. Good afternoon, one and all, and thank you. I attended presentation. I attended this for the first time. It was very educative presentation or information given by all the eminent panels. So my question is related to the presentation made by Ishaa ji. She very beautifully explained few items wherein which can be energy savers. Like she mentioned, power control factors, capacitor banks, efficient engines, motor efficient, right? So, madam, I want to check whether all these points what you mentioned, which can have an benefit in terms of energy efficiency, are these tested okay in market, or these are only ideas as of now?
No, no. Most of them are already working on. They are already been operationalized and they are used in the industry.
Okay, so say for example, if you want to find companies, is it like all the companies are providing these items, or there are only limited companies who are having this such efficient?
You need to actually one by one, as per your requirement, you need to actually get in touch with those companies who are manufacturing that, because there are different like for the capacitors, I have talked about group capacitors and all. So you need to actually see what kind of the things they are, each individual is manufacturing, whether it is meeting your criteria, what you are looking for. And price.
But all these are tested okay, so this can be I mean these are tested okay.
I have talked about the technologies. I haven't got into the company's nitty-gritties.
No, so just for my academic knowledge, this is not something just for my academic knowledge I'm saying. So thank you, you answered my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. So I guess we are moving towards the end of the session. And I also request all of you to fill in the registration details. And if there are any more queries, you can reach out to us at sustainability@pozhat.com, which we would once again put it in the chat. And thank you for all the attendees. Thank you for all the speakers. Thank you to Ishaa, Hiran, Paul, and Priya ma'am as well. And so once again, yeah, for all the attendees, we Pozhat do offer our services for everything related to sustainability, climate change, and even EHS, especially for India and UK, while we are also reaching out to other markets now. So once again, thank you to everyone who has joined, and thank you to everyone, all the speakers.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It was great being a part of this panel. Thank you to all the attendees as well, and on behalf of Pozhat also.